Synth TV.
Hey everybody, CatSynth TV, and today we are looking at Mercury-8, a recreation of the legendary Roland Jupiter 8 from our friends at Cherry Audio. We'll go into its features in detail and explore a few of the factory presets. But first, as always, a bit of history. Roland released their flagship Jupiter 8 synthesizer in 1981. It was a beast, an 8-voice polyphonic analog synthesizer with 2 VCOs, multiple filters, unique cross-modulation between oscillators, and other voice-shaping features. It also had a memory to store patches, like the Prophet 5, and a versatile arpeggiator. Even though it didn't have MIDI, it was the biggest and fattest of Roland's polyphonic analog synthesizers. It was prized by many well-known artists in the 1980s, and today originals command high prices. Roland released a module version, the MKS-80, in the mid-1980s. In the 2000s and 2010s, Roland released several digital recreations, including the Jupiter X and the boutique JP-08. In the ensuing years, there have been several software recreations of this much sought-after instrument, including the Arturia Jupe 8V, which we have reviewed here on CatSynth TV in the past, and now Cherry Audio's brand new Mercury-8. The Mercury-8 recreates the look and feel of the original, as well as most of its features. We have the oscillator section with the 2 VCOs, LFO, and modulation options. We have the filter section with the VCF, high-pass filter, and VCA, 2 envelopes, a modulation matrix, an arpeggiator, a sequencer, controls for polyphony, voice assignment, and layering, the keyboard, and performance controls. And we can use this button to access the separate effects panel. And okay, let's dive right into it, starting with the oscillator section. As mentioned, we have 2 VCOs, VCO1 and VCO2. The 2 oscillators are mixed and sent into the filters. Let's solo out VCO1 for the moment. It has 4 available waveforms: the always trusty sawtooth, a triangle, we have a square wave, and we have a pulse wave with variable duty cycle. Right now, it's set to 50%, which is essentially the same as a square wave. We can use the pulse width modulation section to control the duty cycle. When it's set in manual, this lever becomes a control for the duty cycle. We can also use the LFO for pulse width modulation. Right now, it's set to sine wave. And let's set the rate of the LFO very slow, and then start to bring the modulation up. Let's turn down the master volume a bit. We can also use envelope 1 as a modulation source for the pulse width. Set this up to be slow. Yeah, you can hear the sweep going back and forth there, which is pretty cool. It's a way of adding a little articulation to the oscillator tone. Now let's look at VCO2. Turn the mix to the right to solo it. It has a somewhat different set of waveforms. Some of them are the same, like the sawtooth. But this VCO also has a sine wave It once again has a pulse, which uses the same modulation controls. And it has a noise source. We can control the frequency or pitch of VCO2 relative to VCO1. We can set the frequency in steps and octaves. And we can fine-tune the frequency. This comes in handy when we mix the two oscillators. It's good to have the fine-tune off a little bit. Set the pulse width modulation back to LFO. Try some different waveforms. And adjust the relative VCO mix. Set the VCO2 range all the way down, and set the VCO1 frequency up an octave. Set VCO2 to sawtooth, In addition to being used for pulse width, the LFO can be used for pitch modulation, which can be set here. Try the LFO square wave or random. We can also have the LFO modulate just one of the two LFOs, while leaving the other VCO fixed. We'll see how this ability to just modulate one of the two oscillators comes in particularly handy when we get into cross modulation. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and look at the cross modulation now. This is really one of the things that the Roland Jupiter 8 was infamous for. So let's take it for a spin here in the Mercury-8. It allows VCO2 to modulate the frequency of VCO1 for a form of FM synthesis. Set VCO1 back to a sawtooth and leave VCO2 on sine. We can of course use different waveforms for the modulator. For each waveform, we have to dial in a different stable point. So now let's revisit the VCO pitch modulation and how we can have it modulate just one of the two. Let's set it to modulate just VCO2, so we'll be changing the modulator while leaving the carrier wave VCO1 unchanged. Bring up the envelope mod. Bring attack and decay down a bit. Bring that down to just under a second. And bring the sustain down to 0. Let's try it again with a short attack and decay. Alright, pretty cool. Now VCO2 has what's called low frequency mode. This puts it in a much lower frequency range, like an LFO. So we're now cross-modulating VCO1 frequency at LFO rate. We can automate that frequency sweep of VCO2 using the envelope modulator. Now VCO2 is still in the audio mix, so we can hear it at very low frequencies, sort of like a thumping sound. We can take it out of the source mix. Okay, reset to default. We also have a hard sync, which locks VCO1's phase to VCO2's, creating the characteristic sync sweep tones when VCO2 is modulated. Yeah, you can hear that sync sweep. We can again use the envelope to automate the sweep. Shorten this a little bit. Oh yeah! We can use different waveforms on VCO2. Since we're on the pulse right now, why not add a little bit of pulse width modulation in addition to the sync? We can modulate pulse width using the same envelope. Aw yeah! Okay, reset to default. Let's bring this guy up an octave. And now let's take a look at the filter section. This takes the output from the VCOs and passes it through a high-pass filter, a VCF, and a VCA. Let's first look at the VCF. It's a resonant low-pass filter with controls for cutoff, resonance, and slope. Let's start in the standard 24 dB slope mode and sweep the cutoff frequency. Bring the resonance up a bit. Resonance up further. And crank the resonance all the way up. You'll notice this filter is pretty stable, even at the highest resonance. It does kind of squeal a little bit there as we do higher notes. So let's bring in the key follow to match the frequencies to the keys and tame that a little bit. Okay, bring this down, and let's try the 12 dB mode. This is going to be a little brighter. Start with moderate resonance. Higher resonance. And crank it all the way up. We have a built-in control for the envelope modulation, which can use either envelope 1 or envelope 2. Right now, we have it set to use envelope 1, so let's set that up to do a filter sweep, similar to what we were just doing manually. Of course, we can also use envelope 2 if we want. Now the thing about using envelope 2 is that it's also modulating the VCA at the same time. We can also use the LFO to modulate the filter. We can of course try different LFO waveforms. Square. And random. Okay, let's turn that off and open the cutoff frequency all the way. We also have a high-pass filter. We can use it together with the low-pass filter to shape the timbre. Now, one thing we don't have for the high-pass filter is any modulation options. But we'll see how to overcome that limitation later. Turn this off, and let's look at the VCA. This is a basic VCA where we can set the level, As mentioned earlier, you can control the level with envelope 2. Let's give it a little more release. And add some VCF modulation. We can also modulate the VCA with the LFO. Let's turn this back to a square wave. Okay, reset to default again. And now we're going to take a look at the mod matrix. This allows us to assign a wide variety of parameters across the instrument, giving us a lot more modulation options beyond the hardwired ones. For example, we had mentioned earlier that we don't really have any modulation controls for the high-pass filter. We can modulate it here. Set high-pass filter as the destination, and envelope 1 as the source. Set the high-pass filter low, we can also go in the negative direction. Set high-pass filter all the way up. Make attack and decay longer. VIA allows us to add a second modulator. For example, we could add the LFO square. Alright, let's reset again. Now one of the interesting modulation sources we have is VCO2. Remember that we can set VCO2 to be in low frequency mode, which essentially turns it into another LFO. So let's take VCO2 and have it control VCF cutoff. Change the waveform to noise. We also have some other waveforms that we don't have with the main LFO, like the pulse wave. And we can have the pulse width modulated by the main LFO. Set the LFO to keyboard retrigger mode. Of course, we can also use VCO2 in normal frequency mode for audio rate modulation. We also have so-called random sources. Polyrandom sets a new modulation level for each note. Use aftertouch to control the VCF cutoff. And add LFO random as a via. Let's take LFO sine as a source and assign it to another one that we don't have a built-in modulation for, the VCO source mix. And we can go back and forth between VCO 1 and 2 in the mix. Slow that down quite a bit. And let's try another one. Let's take pink noise and apply it at a slight level to the VCO fine pitch. Now, before I continue, I'd like to ask you to please consider supporting this channel so that we may bring you more synthesizer and cultural content regularly. Links to our merch store, Patreon, and Ko-Fi are in the description below. And if you like what you see here, please give us a thumbs up, and please do share your thoughts in the comments below. All right, so that started to get a little weird there. So let's reset again and set up something really nice and simple. And now let's look at the different assign modes that we have. Right now, we are in polyphonic mode. If you look at this display here in the upper red area, you can see the different voices that we're hitting. We have a solo or monophonic mode. We have different note replacement methods. We also have a unison mode. This allows us to stack several voices on a single key at once. For example, we can have 4 voices playing at once. Let's actually bring this up a little bit. We have different parameters for unison mode. We're currently running it polyphonically. We can also have mono-unison. There is a detune parameter, which sets how much of a detune we get between different stacked voices. We could set this low to keep them pretty much in tune. If we increase the detune quite a bit, we can hear a lot of variation. We can also have a little bit of fun here with the mod matrix, where we can take the monophonic random and modulate the unison detune. Yeah, with that much randomness added, the detune can get a little intense. You definitely want to keep the unison detune somewhat subtle. Now let's switch to multi-mode. It allows us to have a little bit of variance between different notes. For example, if we play 4 multi-voices at once, it will allow some variance on the VCF between each note. Yeah, you can hear some subtle variance there. We can increase it. Switch to 8-voice polyphony. Right now, we are cycling through different VCF levels. We can go back and forth, or we can cycle randomly. Let's turn that back down. We can vary the stereo pan. Now, in order to get this the way we like it, let's set upper pan all the way to the left. We can also vary the VCO pitch. If we increase it, we will essentially get random pitch changes for each key press. Let's go back to poly mode. And let's look at another way that we can add variance between different notes, the drift feature. This allows us to just add a little bit of random variance to some of the major parameters in the system, such as the VCO pitches, the VCF, and the VCA. For example, we can have some random variance of the VCO pitch. It's pretty subtle. We can jack it all the way up if we want. Bring it back down to a civilized level. We could do the same thing with VCF. Turn VCF drift all the way up. Now, in addition to setting it manually, we have different drift presets. Brand new pretty much has drift at very low levels. The studio preset is the default drift level. Some others with more drift. And finally, service means it's time to take your Mercury-8 into the virtual repair shop. I wonder what it says about me that I actually like the sound of the service preset. Okay, let's set this back to studio mode and turn that off. Now so far, we've been doing everything with just the upper layer and staying in what's called whole key mode. We can instead switch to dual mode, which lets us use two different layers at once. Stay with the upper layer that we've been using. We also have a lower layer. You can tell that we're on the lower layer when all the controls change from red to green. So upper layer, lower layer, upper layer, lower layer. We can solo out the lower layer. Let's turn its volume down. And let's dial in a simple sound. And let's create a really squelchy bass sound. So there we want to go like that. Increase resonance. Bring the envelope mod up quite a bit. There, nice and squelchy. Let's bring back in the upper layer. Let's go back to the upper layer, solo this one out, and let's modify the parameters to create a nice gentle pad sound. Let's add in some pulse width modulation. And add a subtle random modulation to VCO2 pitch. Lovely. Now unsolo to hear the two layers together. Now instead of stacking the layers, we can split the keyboard between upper and lower. Let's adjust the volume and high-pass filter a bit. Adjust the upper level a bit. Nice! We have a fade option in split mode. This allows more fine-grained control over the split points and layering. This is pretty much the same settings as we already set up. We can also overlap the layers. The levels will fade from one layer to the other on the overlapping keys. Okay, let's go ahead and turn this off. And let's take a look at the effects section. There are separate effects buses for the upper layer and lower layer, as well as a global bus that applies effects to the mix of both the upper and lower layers. The design is quite similar to what we recently saw with the Cherry Audio Trident. Let's start with the upper layer. We have a wide variety of different effects we can choose from here. Let's add the DCO chorus, which is a vintage Juno-like chorus with 3 programs. Now, because it's a vintage chorus, we have an option to add a little noise to the signal. Adjust the layers here, and back to the effects page. Go to the lower, and let's pick the dual phaser, which emulates a classic Boutron biphaser. We have different speeds on the 2 phaser modules. Set the number of stages independently. Cool. Now back to the upper bus, and let's add the lo-fi effect. Recall that we saw this effect in the Trident. It adds a variety of low fidelity qualities to the signal, including vinyl noise, which I'm going to turn down, turn up wow and flutter. Back to the lower bus. How about we add a ring modulator? Yeah, it's a pretty gnarly effect, especially on bass tones. We also have what's called the effects modulator, which is a separate LFO for each bus that can be used to modulate the amount of a particular effect. For example, we can set the ring modulator to come in and out. Let's use the sine wave on the modulator. There we go. Now we can also modulate the amount of upper and lower levels using our mod matrix. Let's turn the effect amount all the way down on the top. Select Effects Upper Level. Mod wheel is the source. Now we're getting vibrato because that's turned on by default for the mod wheel. Go back to the keyboard panel, and let's turn off the mod wheel so it's just controlling the effects level. We can also use the random modulator to control the effects bus level, so different notes will have different amounts of effects processing. Now let's go to the global bus. As mentioned, this operates on the output from the 2 layer buses. This is a good one to use with one of the many available reverbs. For example, we have a spring reverb. Pretty intense there. We also have the lush verb. We can set the amount of decay there, increase the amount of early reflections, put a bit of a high-pass filter on. The lush verb also has its own modulator for the decay time. And of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't throw in the galactic reverb. I'm actually going to put that on the second slot and turn off the lush verb for now. Of course, there is nothing stopping us from using both reverbs together. Okay, switch back to the keyboard panel and back to single layer mode. Let's give the sound a shorter envelope. Turn this down. Okay. And now let's take a look at the arpeggiator. Once again, this is very similar to the arpeggiator we saw in the Trident. It has several different play modes available. You can set the directions, and then we have different ways of modifying the arpeggiator. Right now, we are in basic ARP mode, which plays the notes in ascending or descending order. Let's turn the arpeggiator on. We have order mode, which actually keeps them in the order that you play them. You can change the direction of the notes. Right now we're going both up and down. We can go just up. We have what is so-called leap mode. This is a special mode that was introduced in the Trident and plays the first note in the current octave with the next note happening an octave above and the note after that happening an octave below. We also have a random mode. We have a swing parameter, feel puts the notes a little ahead or behind the beat, chance allows you to add some gaps and variety into the arpeggio. Right now we're at 100%, which means that every note in the arpeggio will fire. If we lower the chance parameter, it will decrease the probability that any particular note in the arpeggio will fire, which means we will get some rests. Alright, turn off the arpeggiator, and let's switch back to split mode. And now let's take a look at the sequencer. This is a step sequencer with up to 4 different patterns available, each with up to 16 steps. Each of the 2 layers has its own sequencer. Now this is a polyphonic sequencer, which means that each step can have a chord on it. To add a single note or a chord to the sequence pattern, simply click on the desired step and play the notes. Repeat for all the steps that you want to add. To start playing, switch the sequencer on, and make sure it's routed to the upper layer. Right now, the sequencer is in loop mode and playing continuously. We can set it to start or stop when a key is pressed or released. We can also have the sequence transpose based on the key. There is a separate sequencer for the lower level. Let's enter a sequence pattern here, this time with single notes. Turn it on and route it to the lower layer. Let's turn off the lower layer one entirely and just leave on the upper layer sequencer for now. Let's add something in pattern B. Right now, we are in manual pattern mode, so the sequencer will play whichever pattern we select. Go to A, and back to B. We have modes to automatically play the selected patterns in a loop, without repeats, repeating each pattern twice, go to pattern B. We can add accents to some of the steps. We can also tie steps for longer notes. Okay, let's listen to what we have. and go back to pattern A. Add some accents and ties. Just like with the Arpeggiator, we have controls for swing, chance, feel, and of course speed. Okay, back to the lower level sequencer. Instead of routing the sequencer directly to the layer voices, we can turn the routing off. This allows us to instead use the sequencer as another modulation source. Let's assign values to all the steps. And set the total number of steps to 10. If we play the sequencer, we get nothing. So now let's go to the modulation matrix. Select sequencer, the notes become CV modulation sources. And let's assign the sequencer to modulate VCF cutoff. Cool! And just for fun, let's turn the Lush verb back on, which we can do without going back to the effects panel by using these handy controls at the bottom of the screen. And there you have it. For the remainder of this video, we will look at a few of the factory presets. hope that you've enjoyed this detailed look at Mercury-8. To find out more, please visit cherryaudio.com and check out the description below this video. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to CatSynth TV.